On today's episode, join myself, as David likes to call himself. I'm Dixon Dedman and David Mark Young. I had a huge plan to ask David a great question, and we somehow got hijacked into talking about the conception of confiscated and how taxation is kind of a weird thing in the bourbon industry.
Blending Bourbon is the podcast that takes you beyond the barrel and behind the scenes of the whiskey industry with master blenders Dixon Dedman and David Mark Young.
Welcome back to all 9 of you to another episode of Blending Bourbon. My name is Dixon Dedman of 2XO Whiskey, joined by my good friend and the first ever male model to enter the bourbon space, Mr. David Mark Young, owner and master blender of Golden Sheaf, the pride of Omaha, Nebraska, who is now in Illinois. Go figure. What's up, man?
On the road again. Yeah. Hi, Dixon. How are you?
I'm terrific. Thank you.
Thanks for the hit intro. Yeah, I'm in Champaign, Illinois. Doing some business. Some
Is that what they call it?
With fun. Well, I was born here. I don't know if I ever told you that.
Champaign. Did they say so? It's funny, like in Kentucky, like people come and they would stay at the inn and they would be like, yeah, we want to go to Woodford Reserve. Like we love Woodford Reserve. And like how do we get to Versailles? How do we get, what's the best way to get to Versailles? And it's like, yeah, you're in Kentucky. It's spelled the same way, but we call it Versailles.
Right.
Is it Champaign, Illinois, or Champaign, Illinois?
It is Champaign. Yeah, it's
Okay.
Champagne.
All right. Yeah, but it's much more sophisticated up there than we are here. Yeah.
I don't know about that. Well, it's funny in Nebraska, just right down the road from where I live, we've got a Louisville, which is spelled the same as Louisville. So I often correct
people.
But
even now, like, how do you pronounce? Like, what do you think that city's called?
Louisville.
Yeah. So you got the ooey in there. Like if you're from some, like
Louisville.
Like if you were going to spell it phonetically, it would be Lulvul. Like it's just Louisville.
Like with a mouthful of marbles. Louisville.
Yeah. I mean, it's I got to go fly out of Louisville.
Sounds like a frog.
It's like Louisville.
Louisville. Yeah.
We even have people now that are like, oh, Louisville.
Yeah.
Who calls it Louisville? Like, I don't know.
That's the Northeasterners.
You ain't from around here, are you, boy?
Yeah. We've got Norfolk, Nebraska, and East Coast they call it Norfolk.
It's fun because I was just up in
Norfolk.
Boston a few months ago, and they're like, "Hey, yeah, we want to run out this great store in Worcester."
Yeah.
I'm like, "All right, we're going to Worcester." Like
Worcester.
For me, I think it's like Wooster. And this guy starts taking an exit. It says we're going to a place that's spelled Worcester. And I was like, oh, so we're going to Worcester? And he's like, no, it's Worcester. I was like, that ain't Worcester. That's Worcester. But whatever.
Well, they know because up there, up in them parts, they're wicked smart.
You don't question them up there.
Wicked smart.
But, so you're born and raised Champaign, Illinois, or not raised, but you were born in Champaign. And did people drink a lot of champagne in Champaign? Is that like a thing? Like, I'm having champagne and champagne, bitches. Like, is that kind of a thing or not?
I don't think I have ever experienced champagne in.
Here, I want you to.
In Illinois.
I need to.
Yeah. Special guest.
Somebody in here real fast. Yeah.
Drum roll.
Wait a minute. You got chocolate all over your face.
Yeah.
Here, put these on. And say hello.
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 Hey, no, you gotta make sure you can see yourself in there. Don't quit messing with stuff. Look, just say hi to my friend David.
Hi.
Hey. Well, good afternoon. How are
Good
you?
afternoon to you too. I'm good.
Why aren't you in school?
Martin Luther King too?
Martin Luther King Day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic.
He's just
Are
hanging
you
out.
doing-
He's popping into my office while his siblings go to the dentist. So
Very cool.
this is the future of 2XO right here. He's going to take over for me. The kid's got a sick nose. We haven't started working on his palate just yet because that would be against the law. But
What's your favorite smell?
I don't know.
your favorite what? What do you ask?
Smell?
Smell?
It's probably not your dad, right?
I don't know.
He did. This is the kid though I was telling you about. Were we talking earlier?
Yep.
This is the guy that many moons ago came down when I was doing some blending. He was supposed to be taking a nap. His mom was gone, and I had like 6 glasses on the table, and he's the one that was like, "I like this one, Dad." And I mean, and then I would mix them up. And he'd come back, he was like, "Yeah, that's the one I pointed out." And I'd mix them up
Wow.
again, and he'd be like, "Yeah, that's the one." Like it's.
Picked a ringer. Wow. So he deserves
he's either
all the
got
credit.
he's either got the same problem I've got or the same palate I've got. I'm not really sure which, but
Probably an excellent palate like his dad, I would guess.
all right, you go hang out.
Enjoy your holiday.
Can I get a water?
Hmm?
Can I get a water?
Yeah.
Oh, can I get this one?
Here, just yeah. Sorry about that. It was just
Nothing to be sorry. I feel left out. I don't have I feel like I'm disappointed. I don't have any special guests. That was awesome. That's fantastic. That's it. The future of 2XO and beyond.
absolutely. I mean,
Love
the
it.
kid's the future. We call him the future. Sometimes I forget his name because we just refer to him as the future.
The future.
Yeah.
I'm the future. Fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, what were we talking about? Popping champagne and champagne? Like that's a thing?
Popping champagne. Yeah. No, I remember a lot of Busch Light, Schaefer. I don't know
What
that
about
I've
like
ever.
Miller High Life, the champagne of
Yep.
beers? Do you drink that in champagne? Like that's
Funny story. So Saturday. So I lived here. I was born here. I was a military brat, right? We moved away, came back. My younger brother was born here. Moved away, came back, finished high school here, and then departed for the Marine Corps from here. So fast forward years later. So I go to a friend's house Saturday night to visit him. He's the current high school principal. This is
fantastic. Yes.
yeah, Mr. Wilson. So yeah, we come in and he offers me a Miller High Life, and a mini one. They had miniature ones too. It was pretty cool. But that's his house beer. He said, Mr. Todd Wilson from Rantoul Township High School. Yeah, cheers to Mr. Wilson. He makes a fine principal.
What are you drinking there, Captain?
I'm drinking. No, not Captain. Not Captain. No, this is Golden Sheaf
right.
bourbon, just batch 2.
What was your title when you left? Like, do you have a thing? Were you a thing?
In high school,
No, when you left the military. Like, what was your rank?
I did. I had a rank. I was discharged as an E5. I was a sergeant.
Now, when you
Young.
say discharge, were you thrown out or did you?
No. I was honorably discharged. I did a 6-year contract.
As a what? What was
Sergeant E5 was my my rank.
I can refer to you as sergeant from now on.
You can, yeah. I'll probably make you do push-ups though if you're going to call me
I'm
sergeant.
crushing push-ups. I mean,
All right, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go. 2XO.
We should, when can we talk? Not today, but like when can we talk about? Like, I know that a lot of what you did we can't talk about, but like,
Oh, sure we can.
can we talk about like at some point like buds and I've read books, I like all of that stuff. Do you have great like crazy drinking stories from that time in your life? Like they would let you loose on, and because you were out in California, right? Like San Clemente and all that stuff, and
It was. So San Clemente is right outside of Camp Pendleton. Yeah. So Buds, just to clarify, is Navy SEAL training.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
We, uh, but so yeah, I was at Camp Pendleton a number of times for deployments and school training. Went to marksmanship instructor school there. Went to part of boot camp was actually there. Phase 2 of Marine Corps boot camp. Boot camp was down in San Diego, and phase 2 was up at Edson Range in Camp Pendleton. So yeah, San Clemente. I've got a few stories from San Clemente. We had some time off in Marine Corps combat training, MCT, and so we went out to the beach for the weekend and ran into some skinheads and
Yeah.
Jack Daniels.
So it was like looking for a fight. Like were you all looking for a fight? They
There was actually
kind of meathead like.
ran into exactly that. We this was 1991, so the first Gulf War had come and gone. You know, it was a quick war, and but there was a lot of protesting down that area for some reason, and I think it was more just difference of opinion and looking for trouble. But yeah, they found some trouble, or we found trouble, and yeah.
Was it
there was definitely Jack Daniels involved.
Was it like, you know, when I was in college, I was this loudmouth, obnoxious, but I had this friend, and he was a big football player and everything, and we were Kentucky guys, and you know, people would get all this liquid courage, and it was like, I'm gonna go after the biggest guy in the room because I'm, you know, and he just clean house with it. It's like, you know, I can only imagine, like you get a break, you get some time, you're out there, and then kind of the locals are like, these Marine guys are in our turf and they're drinking our whiskey and taking our women, and then that just had to keep turning bad like every time, right? I mean,
right. Well, you know, I started out in the Marine Corps as a tank mechanic, an M1A1 mechanic, and that school at the time was down at Fort Knox, Kentucky. So 1991, I spent the majority of that year in Fort Knox, right outside. Matter of fact, E-Town was a dry county or a dry city back then.
yeah.
And
Oddly enough, here's a good Kentucky story for you. Or sorry, were you finished with your story? I don't know where you're going with that.
never finished with the story, but a good place to pause.
Well, my great, it's either 3 great or 4 greats. His name was Rebel Goddard. Rebel Goddard. So Rebel Goddard was the son of W.W. Goddard. W.W. Goddard owned a farm, big farm here in town, or just outside of town. And he had 8 children at the time, and his wife was pregnant with his 9th. And the Northern Army, the Union Army, came to arrest W.W. Goddard because he was giving a wagon load a week of supplies to the Confederate Army. And so they came to his house to arrest him. He took all of his firearms and all of his ammunition up into the top of his, like the what they call the widow's watch or whatever, the cupola over his house, and was able to hold them off for 24 hours until he ran out of ammunition. They came, they arrested him, they took him to and put him in, it was a stockyard that they turned into a war prison in Camp Chase, Ohio. So WW is in a he's in imprisoned by the prison. I don't know if that's the right word, but by the Union Army, and receives a
Stockade.
letter, and his wife has given birth to their 9th child, a son, and says, "What should we name him?" And he responds with, "Name him Rebel for the whole damn bunch." So Rebel Goddard went on to become a very famous saddlebred trainer, amongst other things. But he also is responsible for doing all of the groundwork, leveling and doing all the groundwork with teams of mules for Fort Knox. So my ancestor actually did all of the work to prepare Fort Knox for where you spent time learning how to fix tanks. How about
Tanks. Yeah, and drink whiskey. Yeah,
that? And drink whiskey. How about
that's fascinating. I love history, and to hear that it's your direct bloodline or lineage. That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's fascinating. Especially having spent time down there. It's really cool. That's being a military brat. I don't have that rich heritage. That we had to look on Ancestry.com just to figure out where we came from. Aside from South Philly, in the hood, but you know what?
Sunny. Always sunny.
Always sunny, except when it's not. You had a fascinating story I heard when you were out at Whiskey Fest, and I believe it was how you came up with the name. I know at one point there was some encouragement to name an offspring product or baby owl, was a suggestion that didn't really go over real well. But what was it? Was it Dry State?
You're talking about Confiscated.
Confiscated.
Confiscated that we did.
I love that story, and I have a recording of it, but it's in a crowd, and I would love it if you would share that story on this podcast.
It's funny. I mean, I'm one of those people, and I need this. Like, it's kind of like you talk about. Well, I mean, it's why I don't. It's not why I ran a marathon or whatever. But like, they're I'm a problem solver. I think by nature, and I think
I get
like
that.
the hospitality business that I was in, and like, I'm not one of these people that like presented with, like things weigh on me, and and like it's always like, how are we going to figure this out? How are we going to deal with this? Right now I'm dealing with a barrel issue, whatever, and it's like, but I find that things come to me in the strangest of moments, and it's just, it's not like, yeah, let me sit down with a pad of paper and start writing out potential solutions to problems, and one of these will work. Like, it just you almost have to like disconnect from whatever the issue is, and it's almost like your subconscious comes up with the solution, and Confiscated was a very interesting thing because I was the liquid part of that aside, and that's probably another conversation for another day, or and I'm not trying to, it was a fun project. There are complications with that, but it was like, we were tasked with coming up with and not tasked because it was my idea, like how do we create something that is more approachable from a price point, more approachable from a proof point? How do we grow and scale this thing, like create this, and with solely and their kind of insistence on continuing to push the price point higher and higher and higher. And they did that with the bourbon. They did that with the rye. You know, it became very important to me to try to create something that was, that kind of fell in line below that and
Yeah.
whatever. And
Balance it out.
yeah, the liquid part of it was a whole nother argument, debacle or whatever. But so like their team, this marketing team comes in and is like, what about Baby Owl or Little Owl or Owl's Nest or all these things, and I was like, what? Yeah, well, of course I went there, but no. It was like, okay. I don't want to go talk to people about like, here, I want you to try Kentucky Owl Batch, whatever, 9. And here's this new product we have called Juvenile Owl or whatever. Like, it just sounded like really stupid. And so, that entire part of, and it's great. I mean, there are fantastic stories out of it. When Prohibition began, for a lot of the larger distilleries at the time, they basically just had to, just sit on their inventory. They just put it, it was like, they just kind of wrapped the aging facilities in chains and said, you can't
sell
get in
them
here,
anymore.
you can't do this. And, other than for medicinal purposes, I mean, there were four Kentucky distilleries, I think, that were allowed to continue to produce for medicinal purposes and things like that. But for the smaller guys, the federal government essentially came and like seized all the inventory. They just took everything. Wow. They just came in and unloaded it. Great stories about how, my family knew this was coming. People knew this were coming. My great grandfather actually, basically told some of his friends and buddies, like, hey, just in case you're curious, they're coming next Thursday, for example, but next Tuesday, we're having trouble staffing the night watchman. There's not going to be anybody there. And so a bunch of them, and so they rolled off with a bunch of trucks of whiskey and all that stuff. But the story was that, they came and it was approximately 250,000 gallons. So it was three aging facilities full of barrels that, and that distillery was right on the banks of the Kentucky River. So they really could pull the barrels out of the rickhouse, roll them straight downhill, onto barges. They took all of that inventory and said they were going to put it in government controlled warehouses. That was what my family was told. And to the point that for several years, they tried to insure this product. Mm-hmm. And the federal government kept saying, no, not necessary. It's in government hands. It's as good as insured. You're fine. And later received notice that unfortunately these warehouses had mysteriously burned.
Wow.
We're very sorry for your loss. But because they didn't allow them to take out any insurance, they had to file complaints against the government. For 15 years, they were in 3 different, lawsuits. Yeah. Never received a dime for this stuff. And we even have some of the papers that from the government saying, hey, yeah, we're really sorry. It's terrible, but whatever.
Wow.
And I, trying to name this new concept, it just came to me one day. I was like, why don't we call it confiscated? Boom. And we reference, we talk about how, the batches of Kentucky Owl are the kind of rebirth of the brand, and in a new model and a new approach of blending different distillates. And then
Sure.
this product is really paying homage, if you will, to, you know, the barrels that were confiscated. And so that's really where that kind of came from. And that literally hit me in the shower. Like, I was standing in the shower and I was like, oh, that's a cool word and could be a fun, you know, thing to do or whatever. And it was funny. I actually think the owner of Stoli tried to say that it was his idea at one point.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Maybe it was. I don't think it was. But, you know.
It's a great story, though.
Yeah. But it was kind of cool. And you know, the story, the best part of that whole story was that all of that liquid, you know, got put on barges and never made it. So those rick houses sat empty for 3 years, and then they burned them down because somebody took all that liquid, took it north, sold it in speakeasies in Chicago and New York and all that stuff. And it you know, it was all a farce. Like, it was all just a total fabrication.
Right.
Which is why they wouldn't let them insure it, because it didn't exist. It wasn't there. But yeah, good stuff.
Great stuff. Isn't that incredible? It makes you wonder. 250,000 gallons. That's a lot of liquid. That's a lot of barrels.
It's a lot of barrels.
Yeah. Trying to put that in perspective. I was just at Bardstown Bourbon Company not that long ago, and one of the questions I asked Steve Nally and company was, how much have you produced? You know, they just released that Origin series, and how much.
And let me not just back up, but like, we're talking 53 gallon. I'm assuming they're 53 gallon. I mean, it's more like 5,000 to 6,000 barrels. So it sounds 250,000 gallons sounds like a lot, but it's not. Well, you know, it's not.
Well, maybe to y'all Kentucky folk, that's not a lot of barrels, because you guys have more barrels.
Well,
than
no, I understand.
People.
I mean, yeah.
But it is a, you know, it's not a small building, you know. It's
no, not for you Champagne folk. That's for sure.
But you know what's interesting though is you
what
said
were you saying about Steve Nally? Say that again.
Yeah, so Steve, I asked Steve, you know, because they've been in production for 7 years or so, right? The Origin series was just released, and it's a 6-year-old. They're 6-year-old that they've, you know, grained glass from, you know, sole sourced. And the question I asked was, how much have you produced in the last 7 years? And the answer was upwards of 650,000 barrels is what they have in stock. Now, I don't know, you know, what's been sold or.
No, that's what they produce for them, or that's what they produce in total. No, I find that to be very
that's
low
total. Yeah, that's total. That's wow. Total. Yeah.
Wow, that's surprising. I would have thought that would have been higher.
Yeah, and I hope that's right, because and if not, we'll stir up some controversy. We'll gain a few followers from spreading false information. But I'm pretty sure
I'd love to see Steve Nally kick your ass for giving quoting him incorrectly.
He's big. He's a big man. I'm sure he can be scary. No, he's a gentle giant. But you know, even that's a shitload of liquid. You know, but that's what they have in stock. That's how many barrels they have. Hold on a second. I'm sorry. I did get it wrong. 650,000. Did I say gallons or barrels? 650,000 barrels. Yeah, that's right.
That's about 100,000 barrels a year, and I thought they would be higher than that.
That's about the average. So yeah, Nick was there as well, and so Nick. So I think they hit like 123,000 barrels last year, and you know the previous years was close to that. So
interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot of liquid, you know, and of course they're practically doubling their output. But one thing I think is interesting that you said was the smaller producers. There were 4 or so Kentucky distilleries that continued to produce throughout Prohibition for medicinal purposes, but 6 total was my understanding. 6 total in the
maybe
country.
6. Yeah.
Well, 6 total in the country.
Oh, okay.
But I believe 4 in matter of fact, the producers of Golden Sheaf there were 8 invitations that went out to continue producing. Only 6 accepted, 2 respectfully declined. One was the producer of Golden Sheaf, who at the time was the 3rd largest distillery in the country. A little plug there for Golden Sheaf. But you said the smaller guys, they confiscated the juice. That's a lot of barrels for
Well, I don't
a
think
smaller
people,
producer.
I truly don't think that people realize. I didn't realize. I mean, it seems like this is a Kentucky saying. You ready for a good Kentucky saying? Like, in Kentucky right now, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a distillery. You ever heard that? People say, like, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting it. But, I mean, there's a lot. They're popping up everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
That pales in comparison to what there was in the pre-Prohibition era days. I mean, if you start pulling any of those old history books and stuff like that, and the number of facilities that were, I mean, there were 3, 4, 5, and these are ones that were actually legitimate. And then there were probably 3 times as many that were not legitimate.
If not more. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable when we put in the tavern at the inn, which was 2004, and my mother decorated it with pictures from a couple, very, very cool, like historical books of distilleries that operated in Mercer. There were like 7 in this tiny county, prior to Prohibition.
Yeah.
7.
Right.
And big names, Dowling, Jordan, but they were everywhere. There were a ton of them. The Kentucky Owl was started with my great grandfather, but his adopted father, was actually his uncle, was in Lawrenceburg, and the man owned 3.
Wow.
He owned 3 different distilleries. I mean, they were everywhere.
Any idea what they were producing? What those 3 volume wise? What they were?
No, I mean, I know the one, the big one, and that's where the W.H. McBrayer stuff came from and everything. But Cedar Brook was his big one, which was one of the biggest in the state at that time.
Wow.
I don't know how that. I don't know what the volumes. I can go find a book. Now, but yeah, I mean, it's pretty remarkable how many there were, and now we think like, oh, they're popping up everywhere, here, there, but it's nothing compared to what it was then.
Well, and I'm no historian, but my understanding is that back in the day, post Whiskey Rebellion, post Revolutionary War, post Whiskey Rebellion, that's what part of the Whiskey Rebellion was, or that's what the Whiskey Rebellion was. We've won the war, but we're broke, but yet we have to, act like a superpower, or we have to create infrastructure, and the only way to do that is to tax. Well, what do we have a lot of? We have a lot of stills. And the reason we have a lot of stills is because every farm has a still. And why does every farm have a still? Is because grains are perishable.
If you don't use it, you lose it.
You lose it, yeah. So to take it and distill it and, put it in something transportable and something you can barter with, and, you've got something of value with a shelf life now. And so that's what GW and his crew did, was go out and hit up the farms for, and I forget how.
No, they went after everybody's side hustle. It's just
Yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. Their livelihood, they're maximizing their resources, which was brilliant. And I get that. But, and then fast forward, get into the legality of it. And ultimately I personally find that stuff fascinating because I think the, the, the general population takes for granted the contribution of spirit production, the taxing of, a lot of our infrastructure is based on that. And, I always go back to Nebraska. We had the third largest distillery in the country pre-prohibition, and 90% of that state tax revenue, which was pre-income tax, nobody was being charged income tax at the time. And that's where the government raise the money to be able to build our infrastructure and provide security and so forth. And that's just, not the story that's told in the public school systems. And, things are a little bit different, even prohibition, how that story's told. But I think that'd be interesting to get some historians, some legit
We need a
historians.
scholar.
We need a scholar. Yeah.
We need a scholar.
We need yeah.
I say it all the time, and this is probably like wrong. I don't think it's wrong, but I think, but like you think about the number of barrels that are produced in this state, and you think about at how many levels that liquid is taxed, and the burden. I shouldn't say the burden, but like there should not be a pothole in the state of Kentucky. I mean, there shouldn't be an issue with. I mean, it's unbelievable. How much tax revenue is generated. Through what we've got going on and how this is, it's somebody, I hit a bump and I'm like, damn it, there's no reason that there should be a bump there because
right.
Whatever. I don't know.
Because you bought a lot of bourbon and because everybody that goes through Kentucky buys a lot of bourbon. Yeah, it'd be interesting to get some statistics together.
So that's funny. Like that's interesting. Cause you know the ins and outs of it, but it's not just taxed when you go buy a bottle.
Right.
States are different. It's funny. Like,
yeah.
You go to a state, like, you buy a bottle and it's like, you pay the sticker price. It's like, there's no tax. No, but it's taxed at so many levels before it ever even goes into that bottle. I mean,
right.
It's taxed and retaxed and retaxed and retaxed as it changes. Anytime there's movement.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's and when you look at price structure of, as a producer all the way to the consumer, how many tax points but yeah, when it changes hands, and I don't think the general consumer quite appreciates that, the 3-tier system and, having to sell it to your distributor and then your distributor having to sell it to your retailer and then the retailer ultimately selling it to the consumer. And the only place the government doesn't tax is on the secondary market, which that's a whole nother story. But
yeah, I don't know. I worry. I'm sitting here. I'm like, man, because I had a big. I was gonna drop a big hypothetical on you, like this whole.
Yeah, I've been waiting.
I know, and then I feel like we're just gonna have to sit on it again. But I wonder. That's a good topic for exploration. Like, and that's another one that would be really cool to get somebody that can come on here and really articulate, just how much tax revenue is generated by a barrel. Like it would, and like I could probably do some sort of weird back of the napkin math. But if you think about, if you have whoever BBC make you a barrel, or the barrel's not like, okay, I'm going to pay this for this barrel, but from the time that enters that barrel to the time that goes into a bottle of 2XO, or that liquid goes into a bottle of Golden Sheaf, like to walk through, okay, when it comes out of the barrel and is dumped and it goes in and it's sold to you as finished goods, and you pay whatever tax and a VAT tax and all this stuff. And then it goes from your distribution center to your, wholesaler, and that tax, and the wholesaler to the retailer, and that tax, and the retailer to the consumer in certain markets, that tax. I mean, it's almost like sometimes you just, like, if you get too deep into it, at least I am kind of like, wow, that's a lot.
My wheels are spinning. I'm writing down ideas. I'm excited. Yeah, it is. It really is. And all of the raw ingredients too, in those taxable dry goods and so forth, and storage costs and everything along the way. Yeah, absolutely.
It was just, for, what was the guy's name? We had a guy when we were talking about making this podcast, like the guy we were going to talk to, his name like Nate or something like that, or Jonah, Kevin. I can't remember, but whatever. Like the John Q whiskey buyer. Like, do you understand? And because I still sometimes don't. The cost to make this stuff and put it in a barrel and move it from barrel to glass, and the cost of glass, and the cost of a label, and the cost of a cork, and the cost of whatever.
Right.
Not a lot. Not a lot. Cost of marketing, significant. Cost of building a brand, cost of doing business. Yeah. There's a huge part of any, there's just like when you create that model and you put it on paper, like that, what everybody's going to pay in taxes before it actually gets on the store shelf and gets to the consumer, like that's huge. Huge.
It is huge. Don't forget the Dixon Dedman fashion line and photo shoots and all the important things.
Clearly,
that
I mean, you
support
can see,
the brand.
I mean, I really dressed up for this episode today. I'm really sorry.
You always look good, Dixon.
Yeah. Well, all right. We're gonna save the
bomb,
the big hypothetical bomb for another time. But I'm really excited about it. From our offline conversations, like I really, like, there was a place I thought that I wanted to kind of put the screws to you there a little bit, and
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. You're killing me now. I've got to wait until we film the next episode. Well, that's exciting. I'm curious. It better be good. Better be something good.
No, you should be terrified. Actually,
I am.
But
I'm trembling.
I hope you enjoy your time in Champagne, and you're kind of. I think it's great. I went with my wife. We went Saturday night. Like, did her little high school reunion thing, which I think that was one night. It sounds like you're doing it for an extended period of time. Visiting some old haunts, and so enjoy that. Cheers, man.
Thank you. Cheers. Yeah, I appreciate that. Cheers. Until next time, don't forget to like, share, follow, comment, shoot us that feedback. We look forward to hearing what you think. And cheers to everybody out there. Cheers to you, Dixon.
Cheers, brother.